time. This is actually kind of the kickoff event. And so we have always intended to engage flood board. We see the flood board as part of that flood management community that has to be part of this multi-sector dialogue. So we're there, and we will be fully engaging the board.
And I want to add that, Bill, Ken got recording with me and the CAP, and I've been talking to the board after this campsite in the, so the intent has always been to go through the full board.
And we should do a quick process commercial too for the water plan. So on September 27th, there's going to be the water plan plenary, and we'll be bringing together all of the different perspectives. We're working with our WM folks, the flood folks, and we want to start talking about this across the stakeholder community. Go ahead, John.
Thanks. John Kane from American Rivers. I really am excited about your presentation. Great presentation. I want to talk about three things, hopefully pretty briefly here. One is the opportunity to do this in the San Joaquin Basin. Two is a little bit about this water rights issue. And then three, what are the mechanisms to get water supply benefits? Because I think from some kind of integration, because I think there are many, and many of them are probably rightfully skeptical about how we're going to pull this off. So in the San Joaquin Valley, I just say that there's this enormous opportunity, partly because of what Bill said. We don't have a good flood management problems. Even if you were to spend billions to fix the levees in place, they wouldn't be able to convey the flood waters that we already have and we definitely expect to have in the future. So I would see this, unlike in the San Joaquin Basin has groundwater problems different from the Sacramento Valley, so there's a huge opportunity to integrate with the Sigma, and there's a big need to do that as well. And unlike the Sacramento Basin, where removal of levees would cause vast flood basins, in the San Joaquin, there's potential to move some levees or actually even remove them, and the flooding would be rather limited. In addition, the flood would only happen about 20% of the year at most, so that there's still a huge opportunity for farmers to grow seasonal crops on these lands. So I won't go more into it than that to say that there's maybe 4 big programs, and I'm probably missing some, or needs in the San Joaquin Valley. One is the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan compliance to protect beneficial uses. Another is the flood plan and reducing flood risk and flood O&M in the San Joaquin Basin. Another is Sigma, and another is the San Joaquin River Restoration Program. And all of them could be integrated around something that modifies how we convey flood flows in the system. On the water rights issue, if our vision for how this is going to work is that a number of private interests and landowners are going to put a pipe into the flood system or into the rake flood waters out when there's lots of flow, we're going to have water rights problems. And I don't think there's no way that people can install enough pipes to really make a meaningful dent in those peaks. Some local. So I don't see that as the way to move forward with this. I definitely see the way to move forward with it on places where we can strategically remove these or expand flood capacity. The flood lines out onto what most of the agricultural seasonal croplands during the infrequent periods when we have floods would be recharge basins. And they could be more natural, they could be more managed, but there's some opportunities there. And then I don't want to take too much more of your time, but there's just so many different mechanisms by which we get benefits. One is that if we expand floodways below reservoirs, we would potentially have more opportunity for how we manage the reservoirs during extreme events. We might have to increase the outlet capacity of the reservoirs, but you need to make the floodways downstream have more room. That is a conjunctive use study that the Corps did in 2002. That's what they focused on. Not if you created more room, but what are the water supply benefits from conjunct use. And then there's deep groundwater recharge. There are some places where you can have a lot of deep groundwater recharge. There are many places that you can't have that, but you can have shallow groundwater recharge that might only benefit the system in terms of water supply for weeks, but it have huge temperature benefits. There's groundwater, there's water quality benefits. I won't go on, but there's many different mechanisms, and they're going to vary locations. So we think about this in a very broad way.
Thank you. Oh, yes, please. And then Ricardo, did you want to add on also?
So in addition to the water rights and the regulatory aspect, there's another important public policy discussion that needs to happen, and that's in terms of what is a public benefit. So right now we talk about the Prop 1 Water Storage Investment Program. When that was laid out, it identified what are public benefits. The recharge groundwater is not included as public benefit. And so I've had discussions with the commissioners on this and the board. And the nuance here is thinking of aquifers as an environmental asset as well as a place where you store water. So the physical being of an aquifer, improving the condition of that aquifer, the state, this is in my opinion, needs to begin thinking of this as public benefit, an environmental restoration. And so to the extent that if someone puts 100 units of water into the ground, if they use 20 of those units and only use 80, I think the 20 that gets kept into the aquifer at this point in time will be a benefit. And what the importance of that is, it could, if we can agree with that as a society, it would open up public funding to incentivize people to do more of that, to help recharge these degraded aquifers. The other nuance is, and because we work in different sectors, our language also is different. So we use issues. So folks are making the point, we consider groundwater recharge as a beneficial use. Well, the nuance of the state board is the act of recharge is a storage of water. It's not a use of water. It can't be a beneficial use. And if you take out that water, use, we talk about it in terms of public benefit to the extent that it's helping to improve the condition of an aquifer.
I'm just going to go to Ricardo. I have all kinds of hands up. So I can go to Dave after that. I have some other hands as well. Okay.
So, everybody, my name is Ricardo. I've been in DWR for a long time in the division flood management since 1987. Lisa asked me last night to put together some thoughts. It was yesterday at 2:30, led by Hong Lin of DWR, and we heard great speakers, including Amanda Montgomery of the State Water Resources Control Board, talking about the complexities of the water right issues. You see the kind of chart on that we could work through some of those issues. Also, Tim O'Halloran of the Yolo County Flood Control Water Conservation District and how they're trying to maximize water recharge. So I encourage you to download their presentations when those are posted by FMA. In getting ready for this conference, we were planning these discussions, and I did some research and talked to some professors at UC Davis. So it's interesting that the Almond Board over the last few years has done research in the area for UC Davis research on flood orchards. So they're already signed, the universities and other organizations are looking at how much water can cross during the winter time above their normal evapotranspiration. And so I think there's been research there in Modesto, Helen Key and Shackle and Toby O'Green on the Kingsburg Renault Farms. was discussion of that yesterday, a variety of crops there, and there was a lot of anecdotal stories talking about flooding of vineyards along the Cullamy River in Lodi, how grapes were more tolerant. A plug to the Central Valley Board's history of flood control of the work Michael Mearswan, the Central Valley Flood Planning Team, has done. The state plan of flood control, the 1,600-mile levee system, has 3 great recharge areas. I was thinking to myself, the Yolo bypass, of course, we're mostly all familiar with. The Sutter bypass, both of those take water off the Sacramento River and the Feather River, and then the Cache Creek saline basin. So there's a lot of groundwater recharge going on there. Another area of interest to me is what we call the Lower San Joaquin Levee District, and Michael mentioned the East Side Bypass, which is part of the Lower San Joaquin Levee District. In 1997, which it was a much different winter than this past winter where we had high sustained flows, this winter, 2017, in 1997, there was a huge series of storms, and close to the 100-year storm came down the San Joaquin and San Joaquin River and some of its tributaries, and in the Lower San Joaquin Levee District, I believe there were over 20 levee breaks. It was totally almost double the capacity of the system. So there was a lot of storage that went outside. There wasn't a lot of damage, and coincidentally, that temporary transitory storage used the stages further downstream and protect the developed communities of Lathrop, Antigua, and further downstream to Stockton. We can talk a lot about the modeling and how much attenuation was done. So that was kind of an example of temporary storage that was an immediate plan. In 2002, the Corps of Engineers and the Reclamation Board, which is now the Central Valley Board, completed the comprehensive study. And one of the projects that Reggie Hill, the manager of the Lower San Joaquin Levee District, and others have talked about.
Ricardo, just a quick check-in. How many people actually were engaged with the comp study? I think I see some dead hands around here, so you're a couple people with scars.
There's a lot of good things, I believe, came out of the comp study, but one of the initial projects that the Corps and the board talked about was the flooding of the Bear Creek unit of the San Luis Refuge. So the refuge wanted the water. Reggie was okay with having water leave the system, but we could never take it beyond the initial planning. And also the Lower San Joaquin Levee District has levees in Grassland State Park that Reggie would like deactivated or taken out of the system. So fantastic, John. So there's a lot that's already been done. As I was thinking of this concept, and Cam Muir brought me in, and Michael asked me to kind of get up informed and help represent the division. I guess as the saying goes, what's old is new and what's new is old. So there's a lot of great research being done. Yesterday, a presentation about Orange County Water District here in Southern California, taking water off the Santa Ana River and having planned that for years and years for groundwater recharge. But again, as everybody has said, we see these on the San Joaquin, especially the upper part of the San Joaquin. But ironically, the levee district in the upper part of the San Joaquin is called Lower San Joaquin Levee District. So don't get confused about that. But at least in my opinion, it's limited capacity. There's opportunities there. What's also need to remember to plug the Corps of Engineers, Bill Edgar may want to comment on this, when the Lower San Joaquin Levee District, when that system was being planned or flood control for that area, the Corps of Engineers recommended non-structural flow easement. But the state and wisdom, land prices had risen after afterwards, since we have to pay for the land for a core project, maybe we regret that, maybe we don't. But it is interesting to see the Corps was thinking ahead of time for non-structural system. That would have put in place at the time. The crop use, the land would have been different, and it would have been a great area for groundwater recharge. So thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you, Ricardo. Dave, did you want to? And after this, we're going to switch gears. I'm going to ask someone who's been working on the groundwater side to hop up and talk about how she's from the groundwater perspective.
Hi, my name is Dave Peterson of Peterson Brewstad. I've been civil engineering here for many, many years and have a fair amount of background in this particular subject. Back in the late 80s and the 90s, we had some of the original, back when I was held, did some integrated water resources planning for the Fresno area, and 5 agencies together. The focus of that was balancing the groundwater. And I think in Camyar's presentation, you mentioned that there wasn't much opportunity in the area. The reason for that is you've already done it. It's nearly a complete contained system, and the Bryant unit of the CVP currently has a program called the 215 water program, where in wet years they pretty much give the water away and encourage farmers to divert it on the land. There are details that are important, and I think, Camyar, you mentioned about pilot studies, and this is a full-scale pilot study that's been ongoing for years and years. I would study that rather than get a new pilot study. But some of the details that are important are maintenance of the canals, maintenance of the system. That gets done in the wintertime. And so a lot of these things flow come. And so you can't always get these optimum black zones in the ground when it comes. The other thing is the farmers have to make planting decisions, especially their row crops and field crops. They make those decisions in December. They buy the seed, begin to work the land, and so they can't have their land subject to that flooding later on if they made a decision. So there are details that come with floodwater, the debris that come with floodwaters. They're all details that are important. But one thing I did want to point out, other than this full-scale example that should be looked at, is in Camyar's graph there that showed the gray zone and the black zone. The water that has been studied is available for recharge. Is at least in the previous studies, they're talking about the upland areas. This is where the geology is very important. So the diversion dam at the mouth of the valleys, that's where every one of the diversion dams is. That's where all the head canals are, and they're not down where the levees are. And the water that can be recharged is in those in the Merton Foundation, or the Merton Formation, where those recharge zones are. Down in the bottom of the valley, and I'm talking about the San Joaquin, it's characterized by perching layers of clay under the ground. The most significant is the Corcoran clay, and that perching of groundwater is no problem. And so recharge down is not a good thing, it's a bad thing. And that's where the San Joaquin Valley Drainage Program came into play. The West Side Drain Program, they drained the Kesterson Reservoir debacle.
That went well.
Yes, and so recharging to these shallow zones is not necessarily a good thing. And in the valley bottom, where the flood board's working on, these are clay zones. They don't perk. It's tight. That's where you grow rice because it's tight. And so the notion that the bypasses are going to perk water to these shallow groundwater zones and actually get any benefit, I think that's a fallacy. In order to really utilize this concept, you have to intercept the water up at the mouths of the valleys and recharge it in the recharge zones, places that perk. So I'm encouraged by this whole concept, but let's not talk past each other here. The recharge needs to happen in the upland areas, not in the lowland areas.
And that's what one of the intents of putting the white paper together is to document the work that's been done and get people to actually communicate across sectors.
Thank you. Now let's thank all of our surprise panelists who didn't, Mayor, the only one that actually knows the new column was Ricardo. So let's thank everyone that. And return this to Kat. And again, many of us are as a person working in kind of a media space. But she actually did her master's degree working on groundwater recharge and conjunctive use. So I asked her to come into this conversation from the perspective of a groundwater manager. And there, so let me turn this over to Kat.
Excellent, excellent. So, no one tripping in. I'm Dr. Kat Schreier, Water Resources Media Foundation. I actually talk about water from every perspective imaginable. And a lot of, from my background as a water planner, and I do have a PhD in water planning and civil engineering from Colorado State University. And you may have seen me here at the conference in the capacity of doing media coverage for Resources Media, trying to capture the stories of water and convey that in a way that you can really access. So you have a good Plane 2017. You'll see the interviews that we've done so far. And let me see if I can work this quicker. But when I actually was invited here by John Yang from the board with Stantec Works with Lisa, and wanted to, he was looking at talking communications and outreach, and then we were looking at this panel about groundwater, and I said, oh, you mean something like what I did in my dissertation, which is a knowledge-based spatial methodology for evaluation of groundwater recharge for stream augmentation and waterfowl habitat, and many different ways of using those research and different incentives available associated with that. And an important term here is knowledge-based, because what we were doing here, and the funny thing is that this is the project that got me into media. This is the project that got me into media because it's a knowledge-based system. Therefore, we're taking, we have knowledge, scientific studies and everything, but we also needed to grab a lot of information from the community, from the close to habitat, and really understood what was going on with those systems. Didn't necessarily have a number of equations associated with it, but they really knew what was going on. And what was based on was these semi-structured interviews. So I've got to make sure my And by the way, we were building on it, and I'm not sure actually if anybody wants the full slides, go ahead and text me at 202-344-7894. These were the slides I presented to the Colorado Riparian Association, so obviously we're dealing with riparian systems and flood and groundwater recharge and habitat and everything goes on in riparian systems in Colorado. And I'll be happy to share that with you. So I'm trying to remember which of the slides I took out. But of course, this is coming out of an engineering dissertation. I have to have my required equation. Thank you very much. My equation is in there. This is the Glover equation, and it looks at how stream flow depletion occurs or stream flow accretion occurs when you do recharge, or depletion if you have a well in a riparian zone. And really looking at, as we've discussed here, this idea of peak flows and being able to capture those peak flows and put those back into the system. Now, why? So what happened in Colorado is, and I'll just kind of buzz through this really quickly. This is kind of the official explanation is, there was the Water Rights Determination Act in 1969. That required augmentation of the streams and offsetting the depletions from groundwater use on the riparian lands. They had USGS go out and do these maps that basically represented those stream accretions the river. So this is a 30-day pond, this is a 60-day pond, this is a 90-day pond. And with that, you could really time when the flows are coming back and associate water rights with that. And actually what a lot of farmers were starting to do, they were seeing additional revenue stream opportunities, different type of stream, if they had more return flows, that could be sold to another farmer that didn't have a place for recharge basins. They really created an additional market opportunity there. So they digitized it. There's all sorts of systems. The universities got involved, South Platte Lower River Group. And we were looking at how to cite good recharge ponds for the best credits, looking at the cost, looking at hydrology, benefits. And by the way, I want to back up a little bit. Where this actually came from, didn't start with the legislature. It started with farmers and below. If you're familiar with how groundwater started being used in riparian areas, in the 1930s, the rural electrics came in, and really weren't dealing with little hand-drawn wells. You were dealing with electric pumps. And as those pumps got better, as those pumps got stronger, you started to get larger and larger impacts until finally, a well way back here was actually starting to have an impact over time. So you have that lag time. And the farmers started to see that, and particularly one, Bill Condon, that, when I pump my well here, the sloughs start drying up, days and days later. And he started putting, and it was really the ultimate scientific method being applied. Farmers really know what's going on out there. So what does this have to do with riparian habitat? That is Bill Condon's pond. There's actually a state Supreme Court justice named Greg Hobbs in Colorado. Anyone heard of Greg Hobbs, Justice Hobbs? He's a poet. He's a lawyer. He's also a poet. And every time he has a case, he kind of steps back and he thinks about the case and puts it in the form of a poem. And that's how he communicates, kind of the heart of the case. And there's one about these recharge ponds that said, a duck don't know a pond. And from duck's perspective, they can't tell if it's a duck habitat or recharge. They just, that looks like a good place to stop over on my way to Mexico. So basically, we're looking at this area where a group had already been called the South Platte Lower River Group, tying in with this was endangered species out in the Platte River in Nebraska. Hook cranes, piping plovers, least terns, people are familiar with that. But from Colorado's perspective of the Platte being into that region, they need to have water leaving the state at a certain time, but in Colorado have regulate when water was leaving the state, but they could regulate what was going on within the state. There was also the fact that a lot of land was state wildlife areas would only be used for some kind of wildlife purpose. So there was this real coming together of the Division of Wildlife, Ducks Unlimited, Partners for Fish and Wildlife at the federal level, the rural municipalities, the farmers organizations, the irrigation districts, and as well as the city of Denver. They had Section 7, they had the opportunity to not get sued, basically, if they could come up with their.
Denver was their special water rights situation.
So, yeah. So basically, there were a lot of interest in making sure that this. So, looking during the is enhancing stream flows at the right time for habitat. As well as interviews and integrating that in with spatial systems, because so much of the language, so much of what people are bringing up in terms of the heuristics. What do you look for? What do you what do you think about when you make these decisions? It was based on spatial matters. It was proximity, how close you are to a road, how close you are to a town, or the number of ponds within a certain area, whether it was from a wildlife manager's perspective, whether it was from an agricultural perspective. At the ABK language, you know this, ABK, audio, visual, kinesthetic. So how do people think about things? Are they thinking about it? And spatial combines the visual and the kinesthetic. So
part of what we wanted to bring up with this, we're kind of thinking through, was this is what it looks like when we start to talk about putting it out on the ground.
Mhm.
So when the flood managers are thinking about how to integrate with the folks where potentially you might have the SpringFlow Go, where you might be working with the GSAs, these are some of the kinds of tools and things that they did in Colorado that help them begin a different conversation.
So, I just want to just kind of touch on that really quickly and move past the actual modeling piece. But the important part is to take into consideration it's not just about the floods, it's not just about the groundwater, it's things like some of the positive incentives, and not just, what do we want? We want to get groundwater, how can we make you do that? It was what other incentives were available for the farmers in the region, particularly farm landowners in the region. There were fish and wildlife service grants. There were natural resources conservation service grants. There was Ducks Unlimited would do the dirt work to develop these ponds, so that instead of building a tub, it was in a way very duck friendly. So it was shallow, so they could eat. But we're looking to create some ponds and networks of different types of wetlands for for single ducks, for ducks for families, really build whole duck communities. And then all of that integrated so that when we went back to the irrigation districts, to farmers, they would all say, yes, this is the best, and that, we had a whole series of ponds. And so this to this idea of, how do you really communicate with people, get the information in a way that folks can understand. I wanted to just kind of jump to understanding the power story, understanding how to communicate with people in a way that we're capturing stories and hearing and listening through the story, both giving them an opportunity to express themselves, to connect, to buy in to what we're talking about. When you connect with the public, it really you're doing a sales pitch. You really have to understand them and what's going to make sense to them and what's going to connect with them. They're going to connect with people that they know, like, and trust, and they're going to want to. Sorry, I'm rushing through this a little bit. By the way, one of the things that we're doing is this thing with Healing Harvey, with looking at how many people wanted to put their own stories out there. And that is an important part of the planning process, is giving people a chance to tell their stories, giving them a chance to hear each other's stories. And then within that, you start to really get all the nuances of what's really going on out there, what's the history, what's the relationship, and where does this program fit into the existing community. And just how are we doing on time? Okay, all right. So I kind of jumped to the end. But basically, what you're talking about doing here, you're really bringing together a lot of different communities, people who think differently in different terms, different disciplines, different ways of processing information, different histories, and how do you really capture all those stories and understand those different ways of communicating and bring that all together in whatever communication devices you're using. Basically, I threw this up there because I really see a tremendous opportunity in the planning arena to connect with, use some of the things that have been done in kind of online marketing and online communications and online education to understand the stories of the people that you're going to be connecting with. You know that whatever basin you go to, and this is something that we as planners really learn, whatever basin you go to, there's going to be certain agricultural interests and what's important to them. There's going to be certain rural municipalities, what's going to be important to them. There's going to be the floodplain managers, what's important to them. And that's where you come up with sort of this model, what was called an avatar, which is kind of that model person. You really want to think of that as a person. You know, what is Joe Farmer going to think about this? What is, you know, Joe Irrigation District Manager going to think about this? And that's been incorporated into things like these free online video series where you can really capture their stories and speak in their language and connect with them and provide some of that background information slowly over time. You know, today we're going to have just a short video on this, and we'll have another one coming out later, another one out later. Give people a chance to process and percolate on the information, so that by the time you get to the point of actually asking them to do something, whether it's buying a product or have buy-in to your program, that you've already established the case of how it's relevant to them. Does that make sense? Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
We're just about to the end of time and we'll finish. Wanted to just throw out a couple of steps. So the Department of Water Resources is also working very closely for implementation of SGMA along with the water boards. Right now, there have been situation assessments conducted in about 32 groundwater basins that have identified stakeholders and talked about some of the things that from a groundwater planning perspective is important. Looking at governance, some of the integrations, how to work with the IRWMs. So one of the things that you can keep as a flood manager in the back of your head is some great opportunities to integrate with what's going on with the groundwater sustainability planning process, which is quite organized. You can plug into that. We're also going to be working with the groundwater sustainability planning processes to try to better integrate that into integrated regional water management. So some of the places that you're already living and already hanging out, trying to pull in that groundwater conversation and reconnect it so we can have more conversations like today. Want to really appreciate all of the wonderful knowledge in the room and everyone's participation and taking a risk on our secret panelists. So with that, thank you all for being here, and let's thank our speakers one more time.
One last thing, we are mentioning the water site reservoir applications. The applications are public on the Water Commission website. One of the ones is from the semi-project water district that's proposing 100 CFS diversion off the North River, and that water, which would be flood water, at times during high flow river this year, basin, and the public benefit from a health perspective would be stage reduction in the James bypass, which connects the river with the San Joaquin River, and stage reduction in the San Joaquin River. This is what's in their application. That would reduce the flood threat for the community of Tranquility in the city of Fireball. So this is a project that's being applied for money right now, capturing the concept of groundwater recharge and flood risk reduction. So I want you guys to know that.
However, it won't groundwater recharging, which is very likely. Because that's one of those first water areas. There is no groundwater recharge there. That used to be the largest inland sea in the United States, other than the Great Lakes. It's not going anymore.
I wanted to get time, and I will say we did have one more slide. Walk through some of the things we have to make it happen. So we'll figure out something to get that back. These are some of the things that not in areas as well as submitted as well. So figuring out really where it needs to happen. That's why some of the work that's being done now on sustainability plans will be helpful. But go ahead.
Thank you. Hold on. There's some old stuff that was done. After Jones and stuff. Yeah.
Oh. There you are.
Yeah. They didn't totally say no. Well, they were making sure I already told you I was getting a big deal. So it's called Nicky Dinky. I was kind of like so that's this one I remember is there are issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, what really gets through.
Like a lot of folks, it always really is. Quickly making plans. How to make one, why you should have one.
I just did mine. How do I? How do you make it so?
Physics grad, American Airlines pilot, private pilot. He had his start YouTube videos, motorcycle adventure videos, but he's done over 55 Oroville Dam emergency spillway videos. No, he's doing it for his own YouTube channel. And but he's so he's got a great following. So because they're down And video, for us to be the person taking them on some real behind the scenes. And it's done a tremendous service. Here's a guy for that. He already has a job. Maybe doesn't want to see who you are. Yeah. Fantastic example of kind of communication.